going on YouTube? It's your boy 66 Motul back here. I'm just back out in the garage and I want to make a quick little how-to video on how to do the oil change on a 2021 Triumph Street Triple. It's getting near the end of the season. Well, actually it is the end of the season. It's getting really cold out and I don't think there's going to be much riding left to have. The bike is due for a service. It's spent a couple days on the track and some street riding and stuff like that, so it's definitely time to do the service. Yeah, so I just wanted to jump over onto the bike here and we'll make a quick little how-to video of how to do an oil change on this bike, and I'll go over the process and the oil that I'm using and the amount of oil that's required for this bike. And yeah, so I hope it's an interesting video and is informative for you guys. So with that being said, let's jump over out of the bike and we'll get started. All right, in order to do the oil change in this bike, you're obviously going to need a few basic tools. For the drain bolt, it's going to require a number 8 hex, and then you're going to need a wrench for that. I like to use these oil filter removal tools. It makes it a little bit easier, and then you can just put a wrench on the end here and it gives you a little bit more leverage, especially if it's on there really tight. Yeah, so and then that's just a good way to get it off. That's basically all you're going to need for tools, really. You know, you could wear a pair of gloves or whatever, and if to torque down, there's a torque spec on the drain bolt as well, and I'll look into the book to find out what that is. But I just do it hand tight. It doesn't require too much force, and I've never had any issues with it. Just got to make sure that it's tight. The oil that we are using, I always use Motul 7100 on my machines, and this is my girlfriend's bike, so it deserves the same treatment. I've just found Motul to be really good. You know, I can't say, you know, on a scientific level what oils are better or not, but I've always used Motul and I've never had an issue. I actually find that my clutches feel a little bit smoother with it and a little less gritty. So it's just my own personal preference. As long as this bike, as long as it's it can be full synthetic or semi-synthetic, and as long as it's 10W40 or 10W50. The amount of oil that it requires with an oil filter change is 3 liters of oil. The last oil change that I did on it, I noticed that it was more like 3.3 liters, but that's what the book spec says. It's 3 liters with an oil filter change. You're going to have to grab yourself a little crush washer. You should replace that every single time that you do an oil change. And the other one thing you're going to need is, if you're planning on doing the oil change at this service, which I do every single time, it says that you can skip it in the manual, but I just change the filter every single time. Why not, right? You know, it's cheap, it's protection for your engine, and it'll probably last a lot longer if you do this every single time. So I think it's just a good idea to do this. I just went to my local Triumph dealership and got the oil filter for it. You know, so if you go, I'm sure anyone would be fine, but this is just what they gave me. So it's the one I've always used on this bike for the past 3 oil changes I've done on it. And the other thing you're going to need is you're going to need something to drain your oil into. Obviously, you don't want to just drain it onto the floor. I highly recommend that you go into your wife or girlfriend's pans and take a look and find something that's one of her baking goods or whatever, and use that. I'm sure that she'll be really impressed and happy that you've used it in the garage for that. So yeah, I recommend going to get one of those. Those are really good. It makes for a good conversation. Yeah, so those are the things that you're going to need for the bike. That's just some basic tools. The oil, you're obviously going to need oil. Yeah, and then so we'll jump over onto the bike and just do a little look at what kind of the process is for this. So obviously up here is your fill hole for your crank. This one here is the dipstick to look at the measurement, and then the drain bolt is right here on the very front of the oil pan, and then on the other side of the exhaust over there is the oil filter. So yeah, so definitely a good idea to heat the bike up. Even better, take it for a short little ride to get the oil all circulated through the engine. It helps get all the buildup that's in there out, and then all that settlement comes down to the bottom of the engine. It's too cold and rainy for me today, so I'm just gonna start it up here and get the bike really, really warm. I'll give it a few revs. I'm not saying I'm gonna rev the absolute piss out of it, but just give it some revs and get that oil circulating around in there and hot. If you're not gonna get all the oil out if it's sitting here cold, right? So it's you definitely wanna get the oil nice and hot so that it drains out easier. And yeah, so I'm just gonna start the bike and warm it up, and we'll get back here and we'll start draining the oil out and putting the new oil in and taking the oil filter off. All right, so I got the bike all nice and warmed up here. One thing that I should mention, with the 21 model and probably up, and definitely with the RS model because it has the TFT display. I'm not sure if the other model has the TFT or not. The one thing you can't do is go in and you can't remove the service interval light. It's one of the unfortunate things that you can't do. There is one way around it, because you would normally have to take it to the Triumph dealership in order to get them to reset that, and they will charge you for resetting it, right? So the one thing that you can do is there's a port scanning tool that you can get, and then there's this Flash Tune app or EC Tune app that you can get. I think it only works on Android phones. And you can go into that and you can remove the service or reset the service intervals, and it's also what's used to tune these bikes as well. So that's one way of doing it, but I mean you'd have to spend like $99 to $199 for a little tiny module that plugs into your ODB2 port. And yeah, and then you'd have to get the app that's like $4 or something like that, or maybe it's more, I'm not sure. But or you can just write down your kilometers and just do every 5,000 or whatever the book spec is for it. I do them every 5,000 kilometers, and I think the book spec on this is every 8, but I just choose to do them at every 5 because I don't trust that interval. Yeah, so just a point about that is that the service light will always be on until you get that reset. So, and that's with the 21 and up. I don't know if the 20 is like that, the 2020. But yeah, so just a point about that is that there's no way to actually go into the dash and reset the service interval. There was a way on the older bikes from my understanding, but it's definitely not on this one. All right, so we're just gonna take the drain bolt out here. It's as I said, it's an number 8 hex. It's in there pretty good. Another thing I would recommend doing is up at the fill cap. I would take that off. So you can, the air pressure inside can come through. You keep it on and it'll drain a little bit slower. Equally, you could probably also remove this little guy here. Just if you set your dipstick down on the ground somewhere, make sure it's on something clean so that you don't get any dirt on it. And also the same thing for the fill cap. You don't want any dirt getting in there. So we just got this loosened off now. And obviously just drain out the oil. I'm not going to sit here and bore you with the oil draining, but caution, it's going to be hot. Make sure that your crush washer came off and it's not sitting on there. Sometimes the little crush washer will get stuck on the engine, and it'll get stuck there, and you'll end up putting 2 on. So just make sure that that comes off as well. All right, so we'll let that guy drain out. It's going to take a little bit of time. I let it drain like this, and then I'll go sit up on the bike to get the bike level, and let it drain out. So yeah. And equally on the other side, ow, that's really hot. Don't touch the exhaust. Yeah, so you're gonna want to take off your oil filter as well. If you're not doing an oil filter change this time, then you don't have to worry about it. But as I said earlier, that I do an oil filter every single time that I do an oil change. So I just think it's good practice. Yeah, so you're just going to want to twist this guy off. This little tool here helps. Watch out for the exhaust because it's going to be really hot. And all your oil is obviously going to drip all over your exhaust on this side, which is okay. You can just use some brake clean and a cloth to get it off afterwards, and then the heat will also burn it off too. If you want to get really technical, you could put some tin foil or something on there. Actually, it's an unfortunate place because they put the oxygen sensor right where the oil falls. So I don't know. It doesn't get into like the wiring side of it, it's just where it screws in. But I don't know how good that is for it, but probably not the best. I'll just let it drip out a little bit, and then I take it off fully. As I said, I don't want to, I did it again. Watch the exhaust, it's really hot. All right, so there we go, we got that guy out too. Another tip, sometimes this little rubber seal that you see along here, it will get stuck on the engine. You definitely want to make sure that it's off of the engine and that there's only one rubber seal making contact between the oil filter and the engine, because if there's two of them there, it is going to piss oil everywhere. I learned this lesson in the automotive world when I used to work at my uncle's shop and doing oil changes and stuff, and I accidentally did this, and the second I started the car there was oil everywhere. So yeah, good lesson to learn. Good thing my cousin caught it before it was too much of a damage to the engine, or any damage at all. So I'll just dump that guy out in there and put it off to the side. And I'm going to let everything drain out. I'm going to sit on the bike and get the bike vertical, and then we'll just put the new oil filter back on and put the drain plug back in and fill it full of some oil. So these are the two things that you have to remove. It's a really simple process. Yeah, just need some basic tools to do it, and some knowledge and some specs of oil and whatnot, and torque specs. I actually have the torque specs for the drain bolt, and I remember that I do have a torque wrench that I can torque it down with. So yeah, so I'm just going to let this drain out, and then we'll jump back in and start putting everything back together and fill her up. Okay, so all the oil's drained out of the bike now. I'm going to put this guy back on. The one thing I like to do here is just give it a little bit of a wipe around the where the oil filter sits, just to get any of the residue and oil and grime that's sitting around there off. So filter seal or rubber seal has a nice surface to rest on. Looks pretty good to me. The other thing, just like to put a little bead of oil around here. I like to do it with a new oil. The other thing too is also you can fill the oil filter up a little bit to get all the fiber, like the filter fibers inside, soaked in oil, and then that way it doesn't take as long to fill up when you first start the engine. I'm not 100% sure if it really causes any sort of issue, because it just fills up, really quickly, but people recommend doing this, and I tend to agree. The only thing is if you fill it up completely, when you turn the oil filter sideways, it's just going to drain out, right? So I just like to get a little bit of oil in there, and as I said, I take a little bit of the new oil and just put it on the rubber seal here. All right, so we'll just get that guy going on now. So the spec for the oil filter torque setting is 10 Newton meters. That's kind of difficult to do unless you actually have one of those fancy little oil filter removal tools. But normally what I just do is I go to its stops and then just give it a little extra turn. Right, it just needs to be hand tight. It doesn't need to be tighter than that. 10 Newton meters is not a lot of force, right? So hand tight is basically 10 Newton meters, I guess. And yeah, so that's the oil filter back on, and I'm just going to jump back over to the other side, and we'll put the drain bolt back in, and we'll fill the bike full of oil. All right, so we'll put the drain plug back in now. I have the torque spec for that out of the manual, and it is 25 Newton meters. So you just want to make sure that you put your crush washer on there. And this one seems to be a little bit rounded on one side, and more flat on the other. So you're definitely going to want the flat side down. It's just a washer. Some of them are actually like a crush washer where it actually squeezes together. This is just what they gave me. It works fine. So I just put it in hand tight, and then I'll use my torque wrench to torque it down. of this. And then I will, yeah, so now I'm going to use my torque wrench. I got this, I picked this guy up. It's a Maximum or Mastercraft or whatever. It says Maximum on it, but it's basically the same. And they wanted this set to 25 Newton meters. Nice thing about this one, it's digital, so you get a nice little accurate reading. Oh, too high. Really handy thing to have because there's a lot of smaller bolts and stuff on the bike that require low torque, and if you just have a bigger torque wrench, you're not going to be able to torque them down. So it's a really good investment to get because then I can do everything properly when I'm working on my bikes. And you just want to go until it turns red. Till it stops. All right, so that's the drain bolt, or the drain bolt put back in. As I said, it's 25 Newton meters, and yeah, so now it's just time to fill the bike up with some oil. All right, so yeah, it's time to put some oil on the bike. As I said, it's 3 liters of oil with the oil filter removed and a new one put on. Oddly enough, this stuff smells like cough syrup or cherries or something. I don't know. It smells amazing. If you ever get Motul, give it a smell. It's kind of odd that you would be smelling your oil, but just hear me out. It's definitely it doesn't smell like normal oil. It's great. I like to use this little funnel. Equally, you have your measurements on the side of the jug. This just measured out a liter, and I just put a liter in at a time. Just whatever I do, I like to be precise. So I find reading the numbers on the side of the jug here, sometimes I mess it up a little bit. So I just use this and fill this guy up, and it's got a little valve, or not a valve, but you can twist this open and closed, and it'll let the oil go in. And then it's got a little screen down in the bottom here too that will help filter if there's any like little debris or something in there. So I think it just helps out not getting debris in the engine. So yeah, just fill this guy up here. Try not to mess up the shot too much. As I said, just I should make sure that the valve is, or this thing shut here. All right, well, we got the engine oil all filled up now. Gonna want to put the cap back in, obviously. Don't want to run the bike without it on there. There's a little tiny rubber seal, I don't know if you can see it on here. You definitely want to make sure that guy's on there, otherwise it's going to leak out of here over time a little bit. So just make sure that little rubber guy's on there. Sometimes it'll sit on here, and then like on my MT10, sometimes it'll fall right off of the thing and onto the ground, and I'm like, where did it go? So just word of caution to make sure that little rubber seal's on the cap. So I get that guy back in there. So when we start it, I got the 3 liters of oil in it, and down here is the dipstick. So we're going to want to check that. If the bike's got the 3 liters that they are requesting in it, then it should be safe to start it, but I always like to check the dipstick to make sure. It's not going to focus, is it? Come on, focus. Anyway, it's at the first line, which is obviously not where it's supposed to be, but it's because I also the bike's not sitting on the proper angle. In order to check the oil level, the bike has to be vertical. You're supposed to run it for 30 seconds or whatever it says. Let the bike sit for five minutes, and then check the oil on the dipstick, and then that's the proper way of doing it. But in this case, the measurement's going to be wrong anyway because it has to fill up. I've put 3 liters of oil in it, and then when I start the bike, it's going to fill up the oil filter a little bit, right? And so we have to do that first, but I do have the 3 liters of oil in it, so it should be safe to start it. And then after it's run for a couple seconds, then I will, 30 seconds or so, then I'll turn the bike off, and I will get someone to assist me to hold the bike up level. My garage is actually sloped on a bit of an angle out towards the front of the house. So the oil reading is not quite accurate. So what I tend to do is I turn the bike in the opposite direction of the slope, and then I just hold the bike vertical from there, and in that way I get an actual accurate reading. So that's what I'll end up doing. Yeah, so I'm just gonna start the bike and make sure that everything is good. So yeah, I don't really need to show you much more of the process. As I said, when you want to check your oil, start the bike, Let it run for 30 seconds or so, like get the oil to circulate around. And then after, turn it off, let it sit for 5 minutes, and then get someone to hold the bike level for you and make sure that you're on a level surface. And if it's at the bottom line on this dipstick, after you do your oil, you're gonna wanna fill it until it's at the second line, which is, so like the first line is like right here. It's gonna wanna be to this line right there. So this is the add line, this is the full line, and you don't wanna be above that. Right, so last time I did the oil change on this, it took like more like 3.3 liters of oil to do it, and I'm probably guessing that's what it's going to be again. It might be different for every bike. I don't think it should be. It's just what I noticed last time I did it. I actually had to put 3.3 liters of oil in it. So, you know, that 0.3 liters of oil might have been what I lost in the oil filter, right, when I first started it. So yeah, we'll go with that, and that's basically how to do the oil change on the 2021 Triumph Street Triple. It's very similar for other bikes. I'm sure it's similar for the other years. Yeah, so, you know, doing the maintenance on your bike on a regular basis, and just, you know, it's going to make the thing last longer and, you know, get more fun out of your machine. So after I started, I'll jump back on if I found anything that was weird, but that's the process how to do it. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment down below and I'll get back to you on those. All right, well, I got the oil all topped off on the bike. Yeah, it took roughly 300 millimeters, so more oil after I started it and let the oil drain back down to the bottom. So yeah, so it's 3.3 liters. The one thing that I forgot to mention when you're using the dipstick, that you have to screw the dipstick all the way back in order to get an accurate measurement. So yeah, so just make sure that you do that. Also, it'll be an accurate measurement, and the bike is perfectly level. Also, it's really difficult. Having a sight glass is so much easier the way that other bikes do it, but it's doable. So yeah, so 3.3 milliliters was the amount that it needed. Yeah, so that's how to do the oil change on the 2021 Triumph Street Triple. As I said, if you guys have any questions or whatever, just leave a comment down below. I would like and subscribe if you like my content. It really helps me out. So in the next video, I have another video coming out either at the end of the week or sometime early next week. I'm going to do a coolant flush on this bike. I had water put in it because the bike was on the track, obviously, over the summertime. So I needed to get the water out of it because it gets really cold here over the winter and it freezes in my garage because it's not heated. So I'm going to do a coolant flush on that, and I'll make a little how-to video of how to do that and put some coolant back in it for the winter time so we don't damage the engine by the water freezing. Yeah, so I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. As I said, like and subscribe if you like my content. It really helps me out and inspires me to make more content for you guys. And with that being said, we'll see you on the next one. Peace out.